If we begin to dismantle the cultural story that we can see is harmful, use some curiosity or questioning, we're able to come back to our sovereignty. The earth, Gaia, is calling us home loud and clear. Many, many, many people are longing for and finding their way home. Earth, Gaia, whatever you want to call her, the tree outside your window right now, they miss you. They love you. They want to be in relationship with you.
Hey y'all, I'm Reese, and welcome to Making Meaning. Making Meaning is a podcast by the Cohere Collective here to help guide you along your path to make meaning in a way that makes sense for you. This week, I am joined by LMFT, ANFT certified forest therapy guide, meditation practitioner and teacher, and the author of The Nature Embedded Mind, Julie Brams. I had such a joyful time during this conversation with Julie. I talked to a lot of people about eco-activism and reconnecting with nature, but one thing that this conversation offered that really excited me, and I think is adding an important element to this discussion, is the implications for consciousness and how a metaphysics should really impact our ethical worldview, our morality, and vice versa. If we have a moral responsibility to each other and to the world around us, what does that imply about our relationship to mind? What does mind become when we experience deep relationship with other beings, whether those are humans or, as Julie puts it, other than humans? I think you're really going to love this episode and really enjoy Julie's work. If you're interested in reading The Nature Embedded Mind, it will be linked down below, as well as all of Julie's work, her website, her social media links. Please go check out her work and support her. If you're interested in learning more about the Cohere Collective, there will also be links down below to all of our social media channels, all at the Cohere Collective, as well as our website, www.thecoherecollective.com, where you will find all sorts of information about the collective and the work that we're doing. And consider subscribing to Making Meaning wherever you may be listening or watching, giving us a 5-star rating and or a review, and leaving a comment letting me know what you think. Those are all the very best ways to support this podcast, to support this work. And you could also share it with someone and use it as a conversation starter for someone that you want to have a cool convo with. Okay? That is all I have for you, so as always, let's take a deep breath. And get started. Well, Julie, thank you so very much for being here with me today. I'm thrilled to be sharing this time and space with you and to get into what you discuss in The Nature Embedded Mind. So thank you so much for sharing this beautiful work with me and for being here today. I've been so looking forward to it.
Me too. I'm really glad to be here. I'm so happy to get a chance to know you better and talk with you and your listeners. Couldn't be happier.
Absolutely. Well, to hopefully start our conversation off on a good foot, I always like to start with asking what's one thing that you're grateful for right now.
Today, I would say what I'm really grateful for is the sun. And I live in Los Angeles, so the Tongva people's land. And we are having just beautiful, sunny, warm weather. So I love to be able to go out and feel that on my skin. And I also was thinking, I have this little crush on the solar system. And in particular, I just really love this relationship between the sun, the earth, and the moon, and how we're all like holding and keeping each other in balance and safe. And I don't know, but today it's the sun. Sometimes it's the moon, it's always the earth, but today, grateful for the sun.
I love that. I was actually just talking to a friend the other day. I'm in Dallas, and of course, Texas has had some cold weather recently, which Texans are never prepared for. And it's funny when you start driving again and it's like the temperature outside is so cold, but your car is protecting you from it, but it's warmed through with the sun still. And it's like the power that I'm getting hot in my car when it's 20 degrees outside because of the sun. I was just sitting and contemplating on that the other day. And it's like just the marvel that is, that I could never even begin to explain how that is possible. And yet the evidence is so clear because we're experiencing it every day. So I love that. And I similarly agree with your crush on the solar system. It's never been necessarily central to questions I ask, but it always ends up a part of what we talk about, right? So I love that. That's really wonderful. I also want to ask to hopefully just crack our conversation open and really give us some interesting avenues to explore. What is your story? Of course, you explore a good chunk of this through the nature embedded mind, but whatever you feel called to speak to in this moment is absolutely wonderful, and I would love to hear all about it. And of course, it's a big question, so it does not have to be comprehensive or extensive, of course.
Right. The day I was born, we don't need to start.
Unless you'd like to. If you would like to, we are
Yeah.
welcome to.
Yeah, no, I'll let me like take a leap at this.
Mm-hmm.
My cat is chiming in. He wants to tell his story.
An
Um,
important part of your story as well.
Important part of my story is that guy. Yeah. Um, so my story, I think, is a story of a beginning, a middle, and a wherever I am now, maybe closer to the end, as an elder, which I take as a great responsibility, that I want to show up as a, someone who has gained some wisdom and am here to share guidance and what I've learned in, 60 plus years around the sun, gone through a few rotations. But it always feels like it comes back to, whoa, did you hear him?
Yes, but he's good. He's perfect. Do not worry about him.
It comes back to, where I began as a little girl with this love of Earth. And for whatever my reasons, fascination with human consciousness and human potential. Even as a child, I think I was trying to get to some sense of truth. Um, um, and I was born during the civil rights movement, so that's been a big part of my formation in my mind, is about justice, equality, um, rights for all, humans and animals. And, so that was sort of where, I mean, I like to think I came down on purpose during that point in time to be like, yes, I want to be here for this. And, my journey kind of snaked its way through um, the field of psychology. I've been a clinician for over 30 years. I've been dedicated again to find out, about consciousness, human potential, what causes suffering, and mainly what alleviates suffering.
Mm.
Um, that became intertwined with particularly Vipassana meditation, or mindfulness is what we call it here, and have a long practice in that, which I think is pretty crucial in kind of understanding mental barriers,
Mm.
and how our thoughts can become too powerful in our life. And it's not that we don't want any thoughts, but there's something more central to ourselves, more essential, like that intuition or awareness. Like there is some language to kind of point to what's maybe more trustworthy and reliable and creative than all the thoughts that get bottled up in our psychic network.
Right, right.
And then it led me, as I have to recreate my career over the decades in order to keep it relevant and to keep it interesting to me. And, I've gone through different niches, but there was a moment where I was like, what the heck? Like, what am I doing? What do I want? What am I here to give? And the connection again to the earth was just clear as a bell. When I thought
Mm,
about how do I serve this planet, how do I serve Earth? I would get chills, I would break down in tears, like all of the stuff that I feel is again like that intuitive door, pathway, like here's the right direction. And that led me to understanding through the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy how to reroute ourselves back into the web of life. And
mm,
that's been my current, mission, passion, vision, journey. And again, so it's sort of like a bookends in a way
sure.
where I feel that it's many things, but I also feel that this is a deep part of social justice. It's a
Mm,
deep part of sustainability, but also equal rights for all species, equal rights among humans, of course, but expanding our sense of family to the
yes.
other than humans.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think one thing that's so clear in your story that also came through very clearly in your writing is this call. I mean, even in the language you just used of like rerouting, right? This call of almost rewiring or remembering our original circuitry as a species, but also as an individual and in our relationship to the self, how that still connects us to this broader picture and all of the different layers that it comes with. Throughout the book, you talk about the relationship with the self, but then also the other. And then we have nature. But then, as you just mentioned, there's also this social justice, communal, societal level of reconciliation that needs to happen across all species. And it really is this paradigm shift that all of us, I think, are going through and are experiencing at this time of, oh, this isn't just a social justice issue. This isn't just an ecology issue. This isn't just the meaning crisis. This isn't just loneliness and community. It's like all of these things are deeply related to the same form, structure, system, way of thinking, feeling, living across these different spectrums that now need to be revamped. And in the book, you talk about how this is a very universal experience that a lot of us are having, and it especially around the pandemic was, I think, a time of like great. I hesitate to use the word awakening, but for lack of a better term, coming to me, awakening.
mhm.
What do you think it is about this timing, the last like 6-ish years that we have had in this transition that is calling us to this rerouting, to this remembering?
Yeah. I mean, so I want to speak to at least, re re-emphasize this idea of paradigm shifting.
Mm,
Like that's really important in what I'm wanting to explain and encourage and help people to do. So I want to at least, kind of bookmark that or pin it for a second.
yeah, totally.
Um, yeah. Um, why? I'm going to speak again from my perspective. Why is this shift happening now? And I think it's because the earth, Gaia, is calling us home loud and clear.
Mm,
That in many ways, in many forms of waking up different types of mind, um, fires, floods, pandemics, all of these are opportunities to remember. They're
mm,
opportunities. And I think that, um, many, many, many people are longing for and finding their way home. And that's what I want to phrase it that way, because this, going back now to the or is this, would you like to say?
No,
I
no,
tend to go
please
on
keep
rants.
going. Please. I love it. I love it.
I'm really fiery today, so
No, it's perfect. Please.
ring a bell if you need me to stop.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah, so this paradigm, I just want to hone in on that for a minute.
Yeah.
Because what happened to us as a species is that around, 500, 300 BCE, this imaginary paradigm was brought into existence, and humans were ripped out of the earth, ripped out of reality, So we all began, no matter our skin tone, we all began as indigenous, earth-rooted, earth honoring peoples.
Mm.
I'm not going to get into the whole timeline, but there are these little moments where domination started to occur.
Sure.
And there was a huge spike, let's say around, I always pin it like around 500 BCE, when we really began this fantasy delusion of anthropocentrism, which I like to say this because oftentimes I'm asked if what I'm talking about is woo-woo.
Mm.
And I like to say, an idea that humans are magically above, separated from the earth, superior to the rest of nature in this imaginary hierarchy. That's the woo-woo.
Right.
That's
Yes.
a complete and utter bizarre fantasy.
Falsity. Right. That's
Falsity.
been crafted and created purely out of human reliance on human narratives too. And I just saw an Instagram reel the other day that I think just put this so poignantly, that was, is it woo-woo? Or is it an ancient and indigenous practice that we are returning to that is reminding us of something profound? It's like, yes, precisely.
Right. And it's not like, another reason why I say it's not woo-woo is because it's biologically fact. Like, let's
Yes.
just stick with science. Our bodies are never separated from the rest of the biology. We could call it ecosystem. I mean, the language is part of the problem, because even in our language, we keep separating human beings out. So, whatever. But biologically, we're not separated from the rest of nature. Like we were saying, the sun warms us. Water runs through our veins. Air is filling our lungs. We're eating the plants. We're eating maybe animals that eat the plants. Like, we are biologically, physiologically, our bodies are embedded in nature. The only thing that can pretend or is taught to disconnect is our mind, and and that was done, that mandate, like, you cannot connect with earth anymore, that was threatened by, pain of death, like, or torture, or, like, all the things, like, to make the people of that era have to just say, okay, I don't know what the river's saying. Of course we know what the river is saying, but then now we've come 150 generations and we've forgotten. Of
Right.
course not our indigenous contemporaries. They have not forgotten, our native First Nations people, Aboriginal people, all of, the cultures that, I'm going to speak as a white woman, that the white race has tried to colonize, unfortunately, like we were also colonized by ourselves.
Mm.
We've got the witch hunts and the anti-pagan laws, and I mean, you can look at the history. It's right there what was
Mm-hmm.
done to terrify us and
Right.
tear us out of reality.
Hey y'all, it's Reese, just briefly interrupting to ask you what you think so far. Are you enjoying this conversation as much as I am? And let me know down below what the phrase other than humans ignited within you. I know the first time I came across that phrase was in reading Julie's book, The Nature Embedded Mind, and it really just got my gears turning in terms of its implications for relationship and community and the concept of the other. And then, of course, putting it in context of consciousness and nature, I find it to be a really useful phrasing of this concept. But let me know. What does it spark for you? Again, if you are enjoying this episode, please give it a like, subscribe if you'd like more stuff like this, and you'll find several other episodes that discuss nature, eco-activism, and our human role in the broader web of life here on this channel or wherever you may be listening or watching. So I would really appreciate it if you checked it out and let me know what you think. It really is the very best way to support this work, and it always means so very much to me. Okay, that's all I have. Let's get back to the conversation. I think there's so many beautiful threads. Well, not beautiful, quite terrifying and heartbreaking, actually. Threads of what you're talking about that you stated beautifully in there. But I suppose I'm curious what you think at this kind of 500 BCE marker really motivated this. And I love how you put it, like being ripped out of the earth, humans being ripped out of the earth. Of course, I think we can craft the narrative of church and state, right? Being deeply integrated and imposing a hierarchy for power dynamics and structures, which then can be tied into economics and different economic structures. But then I think we could even go further back and look at like agriculture and food systems and how that's developed and how that led into these systems and structures. And I have to imagine it is this puzzle of all of these different things that we still contend with today. But just in talking about these different threads without, like you said, retreading all of history that has led us here, what about 500 BCE have like sticks out to you as this marking point? And what is that marker? Is there something that just really stands out as like, this was maybe the original paradigm shift that we're
Mm-hmm.
needing to reverse in some way?
Mm-hmm. That's how I look at it.
Mm.
And I know that it's not, it wasn't like a switch that was flipped on. There's a progression, but that was a major point where this, talking about meaning making, like human beings make meaning, and we do that through storytelling. And so the stories that we tell are going to influence the behaviors that we choose.
Mm-hmm.
At that moment in time, this anthropocentrism just was, yeah, I don't know if we want, I'm not a historian, so I'd love to hear from an actual historian what
Yeah.
they think. But, this is a spike in that story that changed from um, earth-centered to human-centered, to
Mm.
humans are now the center of the universe. And we are there then for, or then therefore entitled to do whatever we want with the land. And then, like we trace it upward, right? So first dominating the land, then dominating women, then
Mm-hmm.
dominating, for whatever freaking reason, brown and black skinned people. Weird, because that wasn't always the case.
Right.
That's not whatever. That doesn't make any sense. None of it makes any sense. But that's why I pinpoint that particular moment. And then, not to throw any religions under the bus, but the church did, well, the Roman Empire, and then the church did kind of grasp onto this notion that not only are humans separate, superior, and therefore entitled, but God wills it.
Right.
And then it's like, and I have no problem with God. I have problem with mankind, and I have problem with the story. And if you go back in religions, that wasn't always what the religions said. Anyway, there was no domination. There was this mutuality. There was a way of co-creating and, I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole because it gets it presses a lot of buttons, and I don't really want to do that, but just kind of continuing to challenge this made up hierarchy.
Yes. A phrase that you used to describe it that it resonated with me was this like magical superiority, right? That we have kind of assumed as human beings. And it's interesting because in thinking about a concept like consciousness that you brought up when you were sharing your story earlier, it's hard not to think that there is something that is different about human beings, right? That whether or not other beings have this consciousness or not is up for debate, but there is something that is unique about a human style of consciousness. But it is absolutely a leap to say, and then that makes it better and more wise, more intelligent, more connected to something preordained, something omniscient, right? It is this almost like self
It is.
like praise to act as though we are the connecting piece between something above and beyond this world as opposed to in and of this world. And that I think the hierarchical language is absolutely a really foundational piece of that. And one thing, let's get a little bit into this idea of story, because when you were talking about your story and you were talking about storytelling and how that is absolutely how humans make meaning. And there's a book that I just adore, and it's called The Truth About Stories. I believe it's by Thomas King. And it's a blend of like fiction and nonfiction, but he tells stories about how we tell creation stories. And how much you can just learn about a people from how they tell that creation story, and how different our creation stories that are prevalent today are than they used to be. And in The Nature Embedded Mind, your beautiful book, you talk about how when we discuss this feeling of, resonance or connection to something profound, we kind of default to fiction, which when I was growing up and in school, we're told, well, fiction means false and nonfiction means true. Fiction means opinion. Nonfiction means fact. And I think, again, as you mentioned in your story, like this fascination with truth that I think all human beings have is so beyond the idea of opinion versus fact, of false versus accurate. Like, what is reality? And I think oftentimes fiction lends us the best perspective into truth way more than facts do. So talk to me about storytelling and why that comes through so strongly in the story you tell in The Nature Embedded Mind, and how this relationship to language too is a piece of this puzzle.
Yeah. Wow, that's such a cool question. There were so many things that went off in my mind.
I'm
No, it's good.
Fiery today too.
Yeah, good. Let's see what I wanted to say. So one thing, like you're talking about also the uniqueness of humans. And it is true, as all species are unique, human beings are unique. The story that we're telling puts us at a disadvantage right now, not all of us, but those that are disconnected, because it takes us out of like experienced reality, or what I want to say, because I really love what you're saying around fiction and nonfiction. I think one of the things that is, let me just say this. It came up for me, and I'm going to say it,
Please,
and maybe
please.
it'll answer the question, and maybe it won't. But I think about octopuses or octopi. They are incredibly unique. They are incredibly intelligent. What I don't know is if they walk around thinking about their self-importance. If they're walking around or whatever, moving around, thinking about how much better they are than the sharks. Like there's a pollution in our storytelling.
Right.
This egoic, this narcissistic, and then again, we can go down the mental health part of it. We're kind of really calling out this narcissism and human narcissism, which again is this story, this fictional story of humans as the most amazing species here. And we're not. We know, I just read something, pollinators are actually the most important species.
Right.
Not us. And again, I don't believe, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that pollinators go around thinking that they're more important than the plant. They do their role and they're important. And I think humans also have a very important role that when we're re-embedded into the system, we'll know what that is. We'll know much more easily why we're here, what we can do. That really isn't about shopping, probably.
Right.
It's about something else. And, going back to the idea of human stories, in one way, it's how we explain what we're doing here to each other, but it's also a trap. It's a cage because we tell each other what's okay and what isn't okay. Like our story, our cultural story is, again, I'll use the word contaminated. It's influenced by things. And this is where I like to think about our sovereignty, like our own lived experience. When we come back into relationship with other than humans, we can begin, and if we begin to dismantle the cultural story that we can see is harmful, if we can just start to dismantle it, just use some curiosity or questioning, we're able to come back to our sovereignty, even in our own mind, but it's going to be influenced by, I feel like, more than just other human beings. This is where the act of rerouting, the book is informational, and then the practices of rerouting, of actually remembering how to have a relationship with other than human beings. And again, not just the ones that we're told we can. Like our culture allows us to have relationship with cats and dogs.
Right.
We're allowed to do that. Although some people might still think you're crazy for talking to your animal. But most people are get it, that there's a back and forth relationship. They communicate with us. We communicate with them. So we've culturally given ourselves a few species that we are allowed to be in relationship with. But that is also arbitrary. And for us to be able to come back fully into relationship with all the other species and listening to them for cues about what is our role, how can we be mostly like how can we be happiest here,
Mm,
because that story that was created does create suffering. It makes us
right.
unhappy.
Yes, and I think that that is so empirical and data driven as well, that us as a
Hmm.
human species are the most mentally unwell, the most physically unwell, and the most unsatisfied we have ever been in data recording history, right? That of course we live in there's always the like dinner party question of if you could live in any time period, what time period would you want to live in? My
Hmm.
answer is always this one, because
Hmm.
I actually have rights as a woman, and which of course we're still working on full liberation, but it's like it's
Hmm.
better now than it ever has been theoretically, and
Hmm.
we have access to more medicine than we ever have theoretically. And yet there's still all of these other things that it's like, why are we so unwell in all of these ways? Um, and in the middle of what you were saying, the question that occurred to me was, how do we remove this contamination from the story we're telling? And then, of course, in your answer, I'm like, well, she wrote a whole book about how we remove this contamination. That really is the answer to this, right?
Yeah.
And in thinking about this process that you outline and your own process of coming into communion with, you know, the association of nature and forest therapy,
Hmm.
but also your own processes, I'm curious your thoughts on, as we move forward, because I agree with what you said a little bit ago, that like we are being called to something, right? Like a global pandemic, the amount of political and social unrest and violence that is being perpetrated is unbearable. The forest fires, the tsunamis all around the world, like we're just at a boiling point. Something needs to happen, something needs to change. Do you view this change as something that we can slow and incrementally work towards as a species together? Or is this something that we need to not like level and start over, but is there a certain kind of progress that you see us being able to make within the current system, and how much does that progress have to, versus how much does that progress have to come from a certain amount of dismantling?
Yeah. I mean, okay, so again, it's first dismantling a hierarchy in your own
Mm,
mind, right? So if you
right.
can dismantle the hierarchies, and that's, again, we're conditioned to rank ourselves and each other rather than link, you know? We need to imagine ourselves, because it's true, linked, not ranked. The ranking is fantasyland,
Right.
but we do pretty automatically start to gauge where am I on this ladder of, is somebody superior to me or is somebody inferior to me, you know?
Mhm.
So we are conditioned to always look in that weird ladder, which doesn't
Right.
exist. Once you can dismantle that ladder and step into reality that is about oneness and unity and linking and systemic relationship, we can begin to try on this paradigm
Mhm.
of there is one mind. There's one mind. Like if we're gonna, for me, right, I'm gonna say the one mind includes the entire earth mind.
Mhm.
So it's not just human mind, but all the different consciousnesses, including grass, That
Right.
intelligence is in the one mind. For now, let's just stick with humans. If we can remove the ideas of separation and stacking and come to unity and oneness,
Mm-hmm.
what you think influences that field. What I think influences that field. So we have direct access to that energy field that we call mind.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
whatever you do in your own mind now, you're contributing into the group soup, like.
Right. Well, and the thing that just like really clicked for me in this, because it's something I've personally been struggling with, like how much destruction is necessary for creation, how much um like dismantling needs to be done before progress can be built on solid foundation. And it's the way you're framing this in terms of the access that we have, I think I've only ever heard that talked about as the positive influence we can have on the field. But
Mm.
how powerful is internally, personally dismantling your systemic way of thinking? How is that dismantling in the field as well? It's this reciprocal relationship. I think that is so
It's
profound.
yeah, and it's huge. Like your personal, this is again like recognizing that you're not just your body, like your power, your self is huge and can make huge contribution
Mm-hmm.
by like what I call stepping out of that cage or,
Right.
dismantling it internally. But I also want to say something to you and I'm going to write about it and post about it, whatever, because it's been in my mind so much. And again, like I said to you earlier, I live in a way where I listen, call myself an earth listener, and I listen. And when these images and things come, I feel like they are really messages to us. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to share this because it speaks to exactly what you're asking about the dismantling and the creating. I had this image come to me of, how when you see these buildings or whatever, ruins or something, we see how nature reclaims a structure.
Right.
And so we can see how quickly nature starts to grow within, growing up, or you see it on the sidewalk, growing through the cracks, or the roots of the trees buckling the cement. Like nature is always dismantling these structures simultaneously. And I really want to remind everyone, you are nature. You are
Mm,
not the building.
right.
We always look at it and not somehow, but we've been taught to identify ourselves with the building that's
Yes.
collapsing. But we are the nature that within days is already
Yeah.
creating through the destruction. So
Oh, I
don't worry.
love that image. I adore that image and how it is and it reminds the simultaneity of it,
Hmm.
right? Is like so important there. And it also reminds me of one of my favorite poems of all time by Allen Ginsberg
Mm,
called the Sunflower Sutra, and just like a refrain. I should probably get it tattooed because
mm,
it's tattooed in my brain.
mm,
But it's really about this exchange of techne and physis and how human beings kind of sit at the intersection of this, um, because of all of the history we've been discussing. This one line is, "You were never no locomotive. You are the sunflower." And just what you were saying just really reminded me of that. And it's like that. Remember, you are the sunflower. I love that. Um, One thing that I do want to dig a little deeper into, because I think it's a really nuanced word that we've been using a lot. When you use the word mind,
mm.
what are you speaking to? Of course, I think there's these different levels that we can hold some nuance for, like you were saying, this like one collective mind, nature mind, but then there is some sort of subjective mind, individual perhaps mind, even though it is linked.
Mm-hmm.
Do you view that in a non-physical sense, a physical sense? Is it related to consciousness? Is it the same thing as consciousness? What do you mean when you're using that word? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and how do you conceive of these different levels of individuation?
Yeah, I think yes, it's a weakness in our language that
Mm-hmm.
we don't have a lot of different words for these things. So I think mind, when I use that word, it can mean different things, but I'm for the purposes of what I'm talking about, I think of mind as consciousness or
Mm,
awareness, different from thoughts and even different from emotions.
mm,
Um, in psychology, we talk a lot about a field of intersubjectivity, so that one version of mind exists only between, within the relationship. So
mm-hmm.
that mind actually, like right now, mind is between you and me and the listeners, but functionally, like it's between us.
Right.
Mind is arising between you and me and what we're putting in or being mm,
Exchanging, maybe.
exchanging, what's coming up, what's arising because of our proximity and our engagement is a better
Mm-hmm.
word, our
Mm-hmm.
engagement. So mind, in some sense, is not located in the body. It's located in a field, in an like we talk about vibrations, right? So
Right.
maybe it's a vibrational field. Like again, this is where we start to tip and wander into
The more
quantum mechanics.
philosophical, yes,
Yeah, and
yes,
quantum
absolutely.
mechanics. And that's another one where, I mean, one of my other pet projects is trying to understand what is the felt sense of quantum mechanics, because we don't operate it in a world that, as a human being, we don't like walk around in a paradigm of quantum mechanics. I mean, some
Right,
people are trying, and kind of trying to figure out what does it mean to be in more than one place at one time? What does it mean to jump timelines? What does it mean? Blah, 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 blah. Like there's so
right.
much to that.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, in terms of mind, I think again, this is where if you engage, like turn your attention to an other than human being and suspend your disbelief that it's not anything that can, I mean, they're aware of us. Trust me, they are aware of us. So if you can suspend your disbelief that, it's just a tree, and really no, it's a living being that is immediately, we know hard science, it's immediately running your immune system and looking at what do you need and starting to send out phytoncides to boost your natural killer cells. Like that's hard science. The tree knows you're there. It's reading, we co-evolved. We're exchanging gases. Like we're good ancient friends.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can also take that leap to this mind and say, I'm now going to engage my mind. I'm going to attend my mind to the tree's mind. What comes up? What do I notice? This is what
Right.
the practice is really about. Again, suspending disbelief and judgment and all of that stuff that keeps us domesticated and trapped.
Mm-hmm.
And listening for something, information that your body will register as reliable.
Mm.
And again, I'll bring it back to dogs and cats. Like, you reliably know I reliably know when my cat is trying to get my attention. I'm not making it up, and in the same way, just like I reliably know that you're talking and listening to me,
Right.
even though you're on a computer screen, I reliably know that you're conscious.
Right.
You will begin to remember how to attune to the consciousness of a rock or a stream or the grass or all these things that we're taught. Nope, can't do that.
Right. Well, and that's so interesting from this philosophical perspective as well. In thinking about consciousness and quantum mechanics and quantum physics, there is within the hard problem of consciousness, which is kind of my favorite philosophical area. And so I'm constantly asking these questions about mind and
Right? Yeah.
all of these things. But there is this one problem that is like, we can't definitively prove that we as a subject are not the only being that is conscious, that is having an awareness. We know that other beings seem to have similar consciousnesses. Other human beings have similar consciousnesses. It seems like animals and plants and these other things do, but we can't. There's this problem, in quotation marks for those listening and not watching, that it's like, but there's no way to prove it. Theoretically, this could just like have arisen in this moment, right? But I think what you're saying is really so powerful in the face of that and speaks really clearly to, I think, a problem that I have with a lot of traditional practice in continental philosophy, that is, we're talking about this hard problem of consciousness as though we don't live it every single day, as though we don't have these reliable interactions, as though the experience we are living counts for nothing because we can't prove it. But we all know what it feels like to go lay in the grass and look at the clouds, exactly as you describe in your book, In the Nature Embedded Mind. And it's like, okay, I can't prove it in a scientific mathematical proof. But honestly, at the end of the day, like, pardon my French, but like, fuck modus tonans and tolans and ponens. Like,
Yes.
I have this experience and that counts for something important. And that is this piece of, like you're saying, this kind of lived experience that I think gets almost like squeezed out. It's like wringing out a sponge when we do that, right? It's like there's something that is filling this up that we're just like draining out of it, that it's like, but we're doing this. And Alan Watts has this really beautiful quote that says, trying to define the self is like trying to bite your own teeth, which I think is just such a great, like, yeah, it does feel like that sometimes. But at some point when we're trying to make things like make sense logically and rationally and through analysis mathematically, it's like we have to confront that you can't bite your own teeth at some point, right? And that's just kind of the difficulty of what we're doing.
Yeah, and I also want to just kind of frame it in terms of gaslighting, because that we would have to prove our lived experience. It's like, this is what I mean, going back to that fantasy from so long ago that is still, it's crumbling, but it's alive. Like, if you say, I'm alive, and somebody says to you, prove it, you'd be like, what?
Yeah.
What? Now you're down the rabbit hole of why? Because it's gaslighting.
Yeah.
I don't think you're alive. What are you talking about? Like, if you take the bait, fuck off.
No,
But
truly, yeah.
if you just stay in, I'm alive, and I'm not proving it to anybody. I'm not going to waste my freaking time proving it. I'm alive. I know I'm alive. And because I'm alive, I have sovereignty over my experience, and I can trust my experience. I don't have to prove it to anyone. And then this is where I'm saying, if we have the courage and the curiosity and the support to step out way outside these cultural parameters that, again, are not lived by every culture.
Right.
This colonizer culture, which needs to be done. Go into nature, listen with your body, listen with your senses, listen with your eyes, your ears, your taste buds, your olfactory, your, touch. Listen, you will receive something, and you don't need to prove it to anyone, but it changes your life. It changes the way you are. It changes your story. It changes the meaning.
Well,
So,
because then
yeah.
you're in co-creation of the
Yes.
meaning in that moment. One thing
And
that
what you would get back, I just want to say again,
please.
Earth, Gaia, whatever you want to call her, the tree outside your window right now, or if you're driving, if your listeners are driving, whatever you see outside, they miss you. They love you. They want to be in relationship with you. They want to talk to you. They want to tell you some really important things. I've been living this way for 8 years. So I'm not just talking philosophically. I am sharing my lived experience. And I did in the book put in some other stories from guides, because it's a very particular, like what a guide does, in this method, this particular certification, our training is really rigorous and very long. And we share with each other what seem like crazy stories of what the land says to us, or what the experiences that happen that you think, did that really happen?
Right.
Because there is more out there if we go look for it in this particular way, in this kinship way. You will be met with welcome arms. I mean, of course, not all of them. You got to ask and listen to your intuition. It will tell you if you should approach or not. And I mean, obviously, rattlesnakes, we know the ones that we warn each other about. But even certain trees, I've gone, and been like, hey, would love to get to know you. And I hear clearly, like, no, I don't want to talk to you. I'm like, okay. So it sounds bizarre when you're inside the cage. And that, I think, is part of how one knows how much dismantling you've done, because what you come up against are these feelings of, this is weird, this is crazy, this is stupid, this is silly, this can't happen. Those are all of the bars, those story bars on the cage. And as you just pass through them, don't let them be a deterrent. This whole other world that is real is available to you again as a nature being. You are nature.
Yes. It's really making me think of your example of like dogs and cats, right? Like anyone who has a pet, like hearing you say, like nature misses you. They want to talk to you. They want to be in community with you. It's like, we all know what it's like to come home to an animal that has missed you all day, and just the pure joy that they feel. Like, and that's not I think we could also extend this analogy to human beings, but I think the animal one feels more relevant because of these bars that you're speaking about, that it's like, well, it feels weird when we're talking about a tree or grass because they're not like living, quote unquote, in the same way that we live. And it's like, well, your pet dog doesn't have the same style of consciousness that you have, and yet
Mm-hmm.
we all know what that feels like, right? To come home and feel this being missed you, and it wants to be in communion with you, and it wants to, like, not tell you about their day through words, but, like, catch up,
Mm-hmm.
after you've been home.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you need to spend a few minutes kind of catching up. And I think that that just occurred to me, as well as I love the mental health association to gaslighting, because it is so gaslighty that it's like, well, your lived experience is not actually your lived experience. It's like, that's textbook gaslighting.
Yeah.
Um, but it also makes me think of the very classic anxiety trick when you feel an anxiety attack or a panic attack coming on, that is like, look at 5 things,
Yeah.
um listen to 4 things, touch 3 things, smell 2 things, taste 1 thing, right? Like, you go
Yeah.
through your senses to
Mm-hmm.
ground back into your body. And it's like, we clinically know through research that, like, the using your language of, like, thoughts and feelings are not this mind that we've kind of been discussing, that when those thoughts are taking control, taking that sovereignty away, how do you pull your sovereignty back?
Mm-hmm.
Through present awareness, through tapping in. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I do want to talk a little bit more about the, like, practicalities of this, because I think the nature embedded mind does such a beautiful job of grounding it into reality. And I've read a lot of books on these topics that, of course, every perspective, and like you said in the beginning, every voice deserves to be have a seat at the table. But I love your approach of, like, as it goes through, you do start in theory, but then it's like, this isn't just theory, this is practice. And I've lived this way for 8 years, right? When maybe I'll just start with the first question of, what would be one easy first step that, if someone is listening to this podcast and is like, I've never experienced what you're talking about, but I'd really like to try, but it does feel weird. I am a
Mm-hmm.
little scared. I do think this is a little crazy, but I want to try something. What do you think is that, like, lowest level entry point, one thing someone could do, like, today?
Mm-hmm. I would say, like, lowest entry point is right now in this moment. Notice the other than humans that are in the space with you, that are here with you, wherever you are. Even again, if you're in a car, like, what's outside the window? Do you
Mm,
see trees, sky, clouds? Begin to notice that you're not alone, that you're always in the company of these other than human beings. If you are in a position to wander out of doors, be outside, the first invitation in this method of forest therapy that I'm trained in is called pleasures of presence. So wander out of doors and just notice, what does this place sound like? What is the farthest sound that you can hear? What's the closest sound? Does this place have a melody?
mm,
Does this place have a rhythm? Just to really listen to the soundscape, and then noticing your own sound, either maybe sound of your breath, sound maybe coming from swallowing or digesting. There may be sounds already happening, or you can contribute, add your sound to the soundscape. Um, Maybe vocalize something, or you can, add something rhythmic through clapping, or snapping. If you want, there is maybe, I always hear my birds outside. I will melody their melody back to them, you know? I will just go out and have a little song communion with them. You know,
Mm.
you can maybe you hear you hear the wind through the leaves. Maybe you want to mimic that. You know, you can add your expression in the same way that the others are expressing themselves to you.
Mm.
That's a
Yeah.
way to begin this kinship, to begin this, intimate relationship with the land that you are born from as well.
Yeah. To to then continue this journey, I wanted to ask like these 3 questions all in a row, but I want to give them each their space.
Mhm.
For those that maybe already practice like nature walks or um do have a meditative practice, but I know you specifically talk in the book about the difference between like a nature meditation and nature therapy and how these
Mhm.
are different things, even though there are similarities. But for someone who may have experience or is already primed for this, but is still feeling these bars of like, well, I feel a little silly, or this feels a
Mhm.
little weird, or am I crazy? Like, I'm experiencing this, but like, if I tell anyone about this, they're gonna like think I'm being odd, you know?
Yeah.
And to that, for one, I'd say be odd, be weird, be crazy. The best people
Yeah.
are. But also, there's a quote that you include. Um, I didn't write it down because it's a longer quote, but I want to pull it up
Mm.
because I really love it. It's a Thich Nhat Hanh
Mm.
quote that you include as an epigraph for chapter 9. And it reads, I asked the leaf whether it was scared because it was autumn and the other leaves were falling. The leaf told me, no. During the spring and summer, I was very alive. I worked hard and helped nourish the tree, and much of me is in the tree now. I just found this quote so beautiful, and I think it perfectly illustrates the style of like exchange and relationship that you're speaking to, but also how do we begin to release this fear that this leaf has released, right? Like, how do we move closer to being like the
Mm.
leaf?
Yeah. I would say through many, many conversations with the
Mm,
land. I don't think that any of this is or can be or should be instantaneous because, right, different from, although meditation takes time to cultivate, but we're talking about cultivating relationship, and relationships take time and frequency and repetition. So I think in something like that, to really get to a comfortable place with I am in the world, like parts of me are never going anywhere. Meaning, like, for example, as we walk around, we're dropping dead skin cells, right? Like
mm,
our hair, whatever. Like, we're always feeding the environment. What I'd like to offer people is that they know that, like that it becomes intentional that, yes, I'm going out and I will be giving my hair, or I'll give, you know, my skin cells or whatever, or my
carbon
breath.
dioxide, right,
Yeah.
right,
Or
right.
maybe again, asking your favorite other than human, what does it want? Sometimes they want water. Sometimes they ask for weird things. Sometimes they want honey, sometimes they want beer, sometimes, like, ask. And when you feel that, like, this is weird, is this real? Just trust that it is. Just
Yeah.
start to trust that it is. We have to take that leap. This is why it's important, like, again, in the method that I'm recommending of forest therapy is done with other humans.
Mm,
Because the more we can be together and come back in a circle after we've had an invitation and spent some time with an other than human, we come back in a circle and we share, not like a discussion, but just sharing from the heart. What did I notice? And the more you hear what other people are noticing, the more encouraging it is, the less you feel crazy because you're like, "Oh
Mm,
my gosh, I had that same thing happen," or, "Oh, wow, that happened for you?" So there is, again, we do need our human earth mates, our human cohort to validate around this way of being and share the stories loud and clear because I have a private practice. I talk to people one on one much of the time,
mhm.
and still, even though they know they're talking to me, they'll be like, "Oh, this is going to sound crazy." I'm like, do you remember who you're talking to? Like, it's
Right.
not gonna sound crazy to me. Well, I know not to you, but I couldn't tell anyone else. And it's like every time we make that decision to withhold, like,
Yeah.
understandably, it came from treacherous times,
Yeah.
right? Where if you spoke that, again, you would be tortured, maimed, killed, blah, blah, blah. So there's been a lot to keeping silent. But this
Right.
is the time to break the silence on so many things.
Yes.
But on this, break the silence. Yes, I had an experience with a boulder, and here's what it said to me, and I'm going to share it with you. And that we do start to normalize, like renormalize reality
Mhm.
and stop normalizing the gaslighty, hierarchical, destructive fantasy.
Yeah. I really love that, and I think there's a few things I wanna kind of touch on. One being, um, I think we get really trapped in kind of going back to what you're saying about these systemic patterns that live within us as well. We become our own gaslighters, right? We
Mhm,
become the people that are barring ourselves because we are prejudging ourselves for other people.
mhm,
Um, that it's like, well, I feel weird saying this, so I'm gonna say it sounds crazy before I say it. But it's like, no one said it was crazy yet. You're the only one saying it's crazy until you say it. So I think
right,
for at least for me, it's been very powerful in becoming aware of like how much I'm projecting judgment onto other people. It's like that's not fair for me to
right.
assume that um these earth mates are going to judge me for that. They're perfectly lovely people. Um and I think on top of this, it ties back into a little bit of what we were talking about with language. And one thing that keeps occurring to me is a book that I've been working my way through by Philip Goff called Galileo's Error. And it's on
Mm,
panpsychism, which is a philosophical theory of consciousness um, that, speaking of ideas that people once said were crazy and now is becoming more and more popular and in fashion. But he titles it Galileo's Error because the big error that Galileo made was to say that mathematics is the language of the universe, that
mm,
everything can be explained through this l zeros and ones, right?
mhm,
And that is the fundamental error that we know that based on this experience that isn't true. And then the last thing I wanna add too is how much what you're saying reminds me of the spiritual concept of the witch wound,
oh,
right? That we
yeah,
have this like generational trauma of shutting down this innate intuition, whether that be because our ancestors or our lineage were in Salem or were high priests and priestesses that uh then their lineage was colonized, right? And whether or not you believe in past lives or ancestry, we do know that there is absolutely a history of speaking things that sound odd and
mhm,
people saying you're a witch.
mhm,
Like that in all sorts of different languages. And
mhm,
um I think it's really cool to think about subverting this shutting down, barring language by saying, I'm going to go have a conversation with this other than human in a language that is not the one that we use with each other. It's a different
mhm,
language. It's not necessarily like speaking words to you, but you are in language, in
mhm,
communication.
mhm,
Um,
And
No
again, to
question there, but
think,
yeah, please.
yeah, to think about it as you don't have to like imagine what is that language. Like
Right.
that's another human, you know, tendency to like, oh, I have to
Yes.
figure it out. Like, no, because just for example, very simple, a boulder is going to speak to you in temperature. Let's just leave it at that.
Mm,
You know, like start simple.
yeah.
Ah, this boulder's talking to me about warmth, or this boulder's talking to me about coldness, depending, is it in the sun, is it in the shade? My skin is talking with this boulder about temperature, and I might want to be in the warm part. Now we're having a relationship, or
Mm,
I'm really hot. I'd like to nestle up to the cool part. Thank you, boulder, for being cooling me,
mhm.
and then maybe asking, is there anything I can do for you? It's this again, relationship, reciprocity. This is a big part of coming back into relationship, into good relationships.
Mhm.
Ask, is there anything I can do for you? And then listen. And it may come, maybe nothing is said. Maybe it comes to you in a sensation or a desire. Maybe you feel like running your hand over the boulder. Maybe that's the boulder saying, I would like to have some human energy around me. If we're talking about, different rocks have different frequencies and crystals and blah, blah, blah. Like
Right.
everything has an energy. Like
Back to the quantum. Yeah.
and back to, by the way, science. Science
Exactly.
is proving mythology. Whatever, it's like, okay, we took a little sidebar journey where we were like, hey, what if we're the only species that matters? And guess
Right.
what? Science has shown us we're not. It's like even science is going to come back to reality. So,
Yes. I
yeah.
I was just pulling up because I wanted to get the verbiage right, but I love when I have these conversations that bridge the science with the seemingly woo-woo, right?
Yeah.
Which, of course, is not woo-woo. It makes me think of Arthur C. Clarke, who was
Uh,
a science fiction writer, but also a scientist. And his third law is any sufficiently advanced technology or science is indistinguishable from magic.
mhm.
And I just love that because it's like magic is just this word that we've used to assign um, indescribability, the feeling of awe, the ineffable, right?
Mhm.
The numinous. And just because those things feel intangible does not mean they are less real. And also, the more advanced our technology and science gets, the more we have some language to ascribe to it. And I
Yeah.
don't know if we'll ever reach a point where nothing feels ineffable. I do think there is this thing that we've kind of been talking about that is the ineffability of this experience that may never have a fully fleshed out under like concept or theory of. But I think that this is our advancing technology is proof of so much of this, right?
Yeah. And again, I feel like this is a path forward. This isn't
Mm,
about going backward in time. That's impossible. We could talk about that time is not chronological anyway, but
right.
putting that aside, this is a pathway forward with technology, with science, with all the things. But it's if we can shift the paradigm, the core premise back to reality, which is we are a system. We're embedded in this place. We are,
Mm,
again, linked, not ranked. If we can dismantle domination, if we can dismantle power over, and again, starting very cleanly in one's own mind, like continuing to link with everybody you come in contact with,
mm-hmm.
and not rank yourself or them as higher or lower. Um, that we can move, we can take actions differently if we're coming from a sane premise. And this is where I just want to throw in, my shout out to my colleagues as a Western psychologist. We have a responsibility to come clean and be ethical and acknowledge that this foundational premise is false, harmful, and damaging to the individual and to the system, to the culture. You mentioned earlier about, I think you were talking just about, you mentioned anxieties and things, and, related to like this gaslighting, related to knowing something in your body and then having to act like it's something else is extraordinarily dysregulating. Our body cannot relax when it's trying to function on a false premise. It's going to always be on alarm,
Yeah.
and that's what we've come to take as normal. And then we medicate it in different ways. But I'm saying, as loudly as I can, as a mental health professional, to every other mental health professional, if we reroute everyone, ourselves first, and our people we help, back into reality, boom, nervous systems are going to drop, downregulate, because we're in reality again.
Right.
And
Well, and that is absolutely. So I'm a big proponent of mental health care, and my mom is a therapist. I've been in therapy longer in my life than I haven't, which is such a blessing and a privilege. But that is absolutely something that is just so true in every single lesson that I learn with my therapist is, and you discuss this in the book as well, like we're trained to maintain reality. We're trained to help the client maintain reality. We are trained to encourage pro-social behavior that is grounded, that is rooted. And yet there's so many things that are pulling you up, that are yanking you out of that are disconnecting you from it. And then we go back to we're the most like mentally unwell, the most anxious, the most depressed. But also I was listening to a podcast just this morning about how autoimmune diseases are on the rise and how food sensitivities and allergies are on the rise. And of course, there's a lot of different theories as to why that may be. But the more and more that we learn, the more and more that we see interconnectedness, right? Which it's like, here we are. Here we are. Let's reconnect. One thing that I do want to make sure we touch on, because we have kind of gone into the mystical, spiritual aspect, but then also this deeply scientific and philosophical aspect. When you discuss this concept of, I'm trying to find the exact word that you use, but maybe you can just remind me, but of this universal consciousness, of the nature mind that we are all a part of. Do you conceive of that as God consciousness? And where does death play into this for you? Is this something that, yes, there is something, I don't like the terminology similarly, which I'm sure we're on the same page about, in terms of a higher power. I like to say a wholer power. And similarly, I don't like saying a higher self, but your wholer self. So is there a wholer power that you view as a God? What does that look like for you? And I know you said you've been practicing this for 8 years. Does it feel like a spiritual practice? And yeah, what language feels the most real and alive to you?
Yeah. I think, the shortest answer is no, it doesn't have anything to do with God. It doesn't not. I mean, this is again where it's a very individual, whatever you carry in yourself, you will find it as well. you know? Um, I I feel like my personal relationship with God or something like that, it it's fluid. It's
Mm,
more of a fluid again, relationship where
yeah.
I may have at times held a certain belief or been curious about a certain possibility, and then stayed in dialogue with that. And so I believe personally, I believe in like a pantheistic
Mm-hmm.
perspective, so there to me is divinity in everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and because there are so many things that I cannot know about, both in this planet, like what's in deep sea, we don't know
Right.
everything. Um, so in the planet, as well as around the planet, going back to the planetary crushes, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and what's in between, and what's in the other galaxies. Like there's so much unknown. Um, I can't imagine maybe it's an infinite, right? This is
Mm,
where the human mind runs up against its own trying to, bite its teeth.
right.
It's like, how far does this go? It's like, meh. Personally, I'm like, I don't
Right.
care.
Yeah.
I honestly don't care. Like I care about health and wellness and happiness, peace,
Mm,
peacefulness, harmony. I think those things are demonstrated exquisitely in the rest of nature, and that human beings, having been severed from that system, are abysmal at being peaceful or harmonious. Like we can't
mm,
freaking figure it out. It's like plug back in, plug back in. You'll probably remember,
mm,
how to behave in ways that aren't cruel, in
mm.
ways that aren't about dominating and standing on somebody's throat to get ahead. For what? Like, my
Right.
gosh, we are all those leaves on the tree. We do end up back in the earth. Too bad, we don't all go into like earth pods. I'm fascinated by that. I just want to be buried in a biodegradable pod under a tree. Like that sounds good to me. Then I'll
Mm-hmm.
feed something. And I was talking to someone like, if I really knew my body was going to decompose back into the earth, maybe I'd eat better.
Yeah.
'Cause
Whoa.
I'm like, what the heck is in my body that I'm going to be feeding this tree with? I better clean my shit up.
What a fascinating way. I love these different like psychological tricks we can kind of play
Yeah,
on ourselves to do certain things. One that I've been doing recently is kind of tricking myself into like, well, when you take care of yourself, it actually is working on your business because your business is like partially talking about your story and your experience. So if
right,
you experience things, really you are working,
right,
which
right.
it's like eventually, hopefully, we'll get to a place where I don't feel the need to be productive to take care of myself. But
Oh,
in the
totally.
meantime, in the
Yeah,
meantime,
yeah,
playing that little psychological trick on myself to
yeah.
do it. So I love that. With this
And I would
kind
just
of
say about that
yeah,
too,
please.
just again, like the medicine of the earth,
Mm,
like go out and have that conversation about productivity with the land because it
mm,
will definitely confirm for you how
yeah,
self-care is your work, how caring for yourself and caring for all the others is your work. And you talk about it on a podcast. It's like, like our real
yeah.
work, I always say, like if I'm exhaling near a plant, I've done my job for the day.
That's
I'm
awesome.
helping
Yeah.
to keep the plants alive. Yay me.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. Like I'm feeding. I'm
Yeah.
offering. Yeah.
Yeah.
With this, I want to tie it back into what you said at the very beginning when you were telling your story. and
Mhm.
how even as a little girl, you bookended this with the love of the earth, but you also used this idea of like a deep passion for the pursuit of truth and how
Mhm.
that led you to justice and that that was a real sense of purpose. How would you characterize your purpose today? Do you think of purpose in grander terms, like writing a book and helping other people do this work? And is there something maybe a little bit more simple to it that is just exhaling by a tree can be my purpose? And what's the balance there?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is absolutely both. Like, it's yeah, it's different scales.
Mm,
Starting always trying to start always with exhaling by a tree, like reality. What is a human really here for? Tending my
mm,
body, which is nature, tending the other bodies that are around me as best I can. Then on this grander scale, it's working as hard as I can to spread this idea, to spread this medicine, because I keep comparing it to that movie, Don't Look Up,
yeah.
and how they're like, "Ah, you've gotta, except what I'm doing isn't pointing out a danger. I'm like, "Here's the solution." And I'm like,
Mm,
"Ah," "please, my God,
yeah.
look
Yeah.
again how quickly nature reclaims a structure." Like, boom. I mean, we had the fires here in Malibu and in Altadena,
Mhm.
and already, the land is coming back strong. The mushrooms, everybody is working almost immediately to recreate, you know? So remembering, if we can be in our right mind, be in our natural mind, be in our, as you're saying, whole mind,
Mm,
how quickly we potentially can change the whole schema.
yeah.
I mean, I do think the reason that we're kept, or that part of that contamination story is about separating, is so that we don't galvanize and have solidarity with each other. So again, like yeah, I think I'm answering that question, but that
Yeah.
passion, that mission, that whatever is both absolutely the smallest thing. Go out and check on the plants and see how they're doing today, and make sure that the animals in my courtyard have fresh water and not the chlorinated one in the fountain, and little, like little neighborly things, to the big scale of, please, everyone, come back home. Please
Mm,
come back home. We can do so much effortlessly. That's the
mhm.
thing too. Nature is, for the most part, effortless, and I know that there's gonna be people that wanna point out the violence and I get it, I hear it all the time, but mostly it's a very beautiful system that
Mhm.
sustains itself. We are part of it.
Right, right.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing all of this, having this beautiful conversation with me. To take us into the closing portion of our conversation, I have two final questions that I always ask. One, is there anything we missed that we didn't
Mm.
get to that you want to clarify, that you want to underline, highlight, or that we just haven't had a chance to talk about that you're like, I really want to throw this out there for listeners?
Mm. I think we covered it, but I do wanna underscore the mental health piece, because
Mm-hmm.
that's my profession, and so if you are a therapist or you know a therapist, please call them out,
Mm-hmm.
call them in to this way of being, um, I really feel like because we're so skilled at helping people, we're so skilled already, many of us specifically skilled in family and relationship therapy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a no-brainer to use that, again, this force that we have honed for remedying this broken relationship,
Mm,
So again, I think that's the piece that I would just underscore. Yeah.
absolutely. 100%. Um, then my very last question.
Mhm.
If there was one word that you could use to describe how you're feeling right now,
Mm.
what is that word?
Yeah, it is always this, like, let's see. I would say it's like it's a hard one to name. It's a certain kind of power, you know?
Hmm.
It's a ki I think a lot about, as we've been, mm, silenced, so many of us for different reasons in different ways. I feel people often feel rage, like these intense feelings of
Yeah.
rage. And I like to just, again, re-language that to that's your power. So you're feeling rage. It's like, yeah, you don't want to use it to burn everything down, but to concentrate that energy, like to really, I'm sorry, I think about Star Wars, but
No,
it's
no,
like
it's a
to
great
learn
analogy.
how to actually wield that power.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that's what we can all feel, is
Mm-hmm.
not defeated and not trampled on, but we can reclaim our natural energy and power, and again, redirect it to community, to sustainability, to equanimity, and wow.
Yeah.
And so I feel that, and that's
Yeah.
what I want, to share.
Yeah. Absolutely. It even just in how you're saying it, it's like the feeling of power that isn't burn it all down, but that is the trees reclaiming the building. That kind of
Mhm.
power, right? Yes, I completely agree. Julie, thank you so much for joining me. Of course, the Nature Embedded Mind will be linked down below, wherever anyone is listening or watching to go check it out, along with your work and your Substack Experience Elemental. That will be linked down below as well for people to go check out your work, join the community, be a part of the conversation, learn even more. If this has sparked your interest at all of those resources will be down there. Julie, I cannot thank you enough for your time
Mm.
and energy here with me today.
Thank you. It's been amazing. I feel like I could talk to you all day long.
Don't threaten me with a good time. Hey. Thank you all so very much for being here today. And of course, a huge thank you to Julie Brams for her time, energy, and expertise during this episode. Like I said at the beginning, I just really had fun in this conversation, which is rare to have when you're talking about such dense and heavy topics. But being able to strike that balance of joy and presence while talking about these things that we need to be having conversations about is, y'all know, it's my favorite thing to do. So thank you so much, Julie, for your work, for what you do, and for having this wonderful conversation with me. Again, if you would like to support Julie in her work, which I highly recommend you do, you can find links to all that she does and her social media channels down below, as well as a link to the Nature Embedded Mind, her book that you can read right now. If you'd like to learn more about the Cohere Collective and the work that I do, you can head to our website, thecoherecollective.com. You can also work one-on-one with me to find and pursue your purpose through coherent design on our website, and you should follow us across all social medias, all at the Cohere Collective. Big thank you to Tristan Morgan for making Meanings music. You can find him on Instagram at Tristan Morgan, and a huge thank you to Nicole Ostreicher for making Meanings art and podcast cover. You can find her on Instagram at Nicole O Creates or Nicole O Design. Right now, I am feeling satisfied was the word that came up, which of course then makes me think of Hamilton, but I think also today's just been a really good reset day for me. If you've been keeping up with the My Work at Work project, you'll know some of the updates that have happened across different social media channels, and I've been going through this personal project of really wanting to recommit to my self-work, self-growth, self-development. And it's been difficult. It's been quite difficult. And today marked a renewal in this process. And it's just been a good day. It's also the lunar eclipse in Virgo at like 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. And even though lunar eclipses are like supposed to be really like we're scrubbing at stuff, we're taking a Brillo pad to things, I just think that's kind of what I need right now. And so it feels just like satisfying, even though the work isn't done yet and I know that there's still so much work for me to do. I feel good about where I am in the midst of the work, and it feels good. Like when you're bone tired after a really good workout, that's kind of how I feel, but like a little bit emotionally, but not in a bad way. It sounds bad, but I mean it in a good way. Like I just feel satisfied. Yeah, that is a good word for it. Well, that is all I have for you. And as always, thank you so very much for being here, for being my favorite part of the Making Meaning process. And as always, I hope you feel like you are living more coherently. Until next time, love.